We're talking today with Mr. Robert Austin of Wyoming, Michigan. The interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Now, Mr. Austin, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself? Where and when were you born, for instance?
Well, I was born in Grand Rapids, and 6 months after I was born, my folks moved to Granville. And I lived in Granville to the Depression. My dad lost the house. They moved us out on the farm. I lived on a farm. And
now, what kind of work had your father been doing?
my dad was a car salesman.
Mm-hmm.
And of course he lost his job. And
whose farm did you go to live on?
At one that he rented one.
Mm-hmm.
They rented the farm, and us kids, then we started eating good.
Mm-hmm.
Because we grew our stuff. But when we was in the city there, we didn't eat very good. And we had to go barefooted in the summer because we couldn't wear out our shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And if our shoes wore out, we had to cut cardboard and stick in the holes so we didn't walk on the ground. But when spring come, we had to take our shoes off and we had to go barefooted except on Sundays when we could wear our shoes.
Okay. Now, where was the farm?
The farm was it was in Granville.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't over on, well, it's 28th Street now. But we moved over on the farm there, and us kids had to slop the pigs and chase the cows and everything. But at the time, we thought it was kind of rough. But now I look back on it, my folks are the ones that had it rough.
Mm-hmm. Now, how many kids were in the family?
There was 6 of us, 4 boys and 2 girls.
All right. Now, did you finish high school?
I graduated on June 15th, and I went and joined the Marine in 41. And I went into the Marine Corps the 25th of June.
Okay. Now, why did you decide to join the Marines?
That's a good question. I never did. I think what influenced me was the uniform, really.
Mm-hmm.
But I've thought over the years, I don't know. I had a girlfriend, I was doing good. I don't know why I went in, because it was before the war.
Well, they were recruiting at that point. They were trying to build up the armed forces. Did you figure it was maybe there weren't a lot of job prospects, so maybe joining the military made some sense?
Well, a buddy of mine went down to Grand Rapids, and how we went into this Marine recruiting office, I don't know. But he couldn't pass it on account of his dad, and he couldn't get in the Marine Corps. But I had rheumatic fever, and my mother went to the doctor, and they said, "Don't worry, he won't pass."
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they just shoved me right on through. So.
Right. Now, once you are accepted in, then where did you go for basic training?
Well, I started out from Grand Rapids in a bus, and they took us to Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got in a train in Detroit and picked up a bunch of recruits. Then we went to Chicago and stopped and got some more recruits. Then we started to go south. And one thing I thought was awful funny. We were going along, and this one kid from Chicago said, look, there's a cow." And we said, "Cow? What is it? What's a cow? What are you yelling about a cow?" He says, "I never saw one." He'd never been out of Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
So then we got down to Paris Highland, South Carolina, and it was raining. And we unloaded and got in trucks, and well, I had worn my white and brown shoes and all my best clothes, and they was marching us. When we got to the camp, there was a big puddle of water there, and we walked around it, and they backed us up and made us walk right through it. And I thought, Jesus, what did I get into here? So a couple of days later, they went to the barber shop and cut off all of our hair. And this one kid from Philadelphia, he had wavy old hair. Oh, he was all upset, but it didn't bother me. Then in the Marine Corps, you got paid twice a month. And when we went to get paid the first time, they gave you a bucket what you washed your clothes in, and in the bucket was paper and pencil to write home, stuff to clean your rifle with, and soap and that. And they gave you that bucket, and then they gave you a 50-cent piece because we only made $21. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what the devil did I get into? Here I'm getting paid, and I get 50 cents? And I did know, so that kind of set me back then.
Right. Now, how did the drill instructors treat you?
Well, back in those days, they were pretty rough. They wouldn't allow them to do what they did. I remember one Sunday, we were supposed to wear our dress shoes, and we had a corporal and a sergeant was our instructor, and this corporal come back, and he was a little tipsy, and he saw this one kid without his shoes on, so he called us all outside, and they lined us up in 2 rows, and we had to take off our belts. And then the belts had clips on both ends, of course, these web belts. And he made us run through the line, and you had to hit the guy as you went by. And if you didn't hit your buddy, you had to go back through again. So that was one of they wouldn't allow that today, but back in those days it was pretty rough.
Now, how did you hold up under all that? Was working on a farm and stuff have you in good shape? Or?
Oh, yeah, I had played a lot of sports in school, and I was in good shape. So when I got done, when we graduated, they sent me to Quantico, Virginia, and they put me in the Air Force in there, and they sent me down to Jacksonville, Florida to go to school. And while we was on vacation, or on leave really, or on the weekend, that was when the Japs attacked at Pearl Harbor. Of course, they confiscated all the buses, and they went through the bullhorns yelling, all Marines, sailors, Army, back to your base. So they took us back to the base, and the funny thing about it, they sent all this, there was a naval base, and the naval school I was going to. They sent all the sailors out in the woods, and they had the Marines all line up in front of the administration building. And at that time, we had the old World War I rifles. They gave us each a clip of, which I think it was 5 shells in it. And there we stood. I don't know what they thought the heck we were going to do, but it was complete chaos when we landed. So I don't.
So how long did it take before things quieted down a little bit?
Oh, it was quite a while, because after that, I don't know how much longer it was, a week or so. They yelled, and we all had to get out. To get up, and they heard a plane coming. Well, it ended up it was one of our own PSTs. But they blacked out the whole camp, and they fell the Marines out in front of the administration building. And of course, we had our rifles and our hats, and they didn't call them hats, of course. But everything was blacked out, and here come this car with the lights off. He's going to pick up the commander, and he didn't see us, and he rammed right into all the Marines standing there. I lost my hat, and I lost my rifle. A couple kids got killed, and I don't know how many got wounded. But that was real chaos. Of course, it was all black. You couldn't really blame the guy. He couldn't see. Mm-hmm. But that was quite an experience.
Now, when you were down there in Jacksonville, what aspect of the Marine Air Service were you training for? Were you going to be ground crew or flight crew? Or?
No, I was going to be just a ground crew, like a mechanic or something. And that was a funny thing down there. There was a bunch of Englishmen down there too. And every Saturday we'd have a contest to who was the best marchers, where of course I'm sure we were. Mm-hmm. But it was a funny thing. Every time they voted, it always come out tie. So I guess they didn't want to. want us to do, but I don't know darn well we the best ones. Then they sent me back to Quantico, and they put me in. I was put in like mechanics went this way. Well, they put me in one where back in those days, the tail in controls were all with, you had to put cloth on them. And here I was, I thought was a hairy Marine, and here I was working on a sewing machine, stitching that stuff on there, and I thought, boy, this is great. Here I'm a Marine, and I'm doing that. Although I made sergeant and corporal while I was there, but I was kind of embarrassed, thinking, here I'm a hairy Marine, and what am I do sitting here with a needle, stitching things. So back in those days, you had to volunteer for the paratroopers, and they put up a note on the thing. They was asking for volunteers. So I thought that was my chance to get out of there, because I wanted to go fight.
Right.
And so I volunteered for the Marine Corps, which
the Marine Paratroopers.
For the Marine Paratroopers, which I got a real nasty letter from my sister saying I wasn't thinking of my folks by doing it. So
now, when was it that you signed up for that?
Oh,
was it in '42 or later than that?
Yeah, it must have been. Well, I've been Quantico long enough to make sergeant, so I must have been there a couple of years. Okay. I can't remember. But then I signed up and they sent me to North Carolina.
Before we go on to that part of your story, if you're at Quantico then for a fair amount of time, what did you do there besides sewing?
That was about it. I was a real hairy Marine sitting there stitching.
Well, did they have a lot of you guys doing that?
Well, there was a master sergeant and a sergeant and me. Then there was 2 women civilians that worked in there. Well, you had to stitch that on, and then after you stitched it on, you took it in and you painted, put some stuff on it. It was white. I'd forget what it was, and that made it, hard like. Then you painted it blue after it got done. Then it went back, and they put them on the ships. But I didn't think much of a Marine Corps being sitting there with a needle. So I was embarrassed to tell anybody what I was doing.
Did you get much of a chance to go off the base? I mean, did you get
Oh,
liberty?
yeah.
And where would you go when you could go off base?
Oh, I went to Washington, D.C. mostly. We went to Washington, D.C. and that'd be mostly on weekends.
And what was going on there? What was there to do when you went there?
Well, I used to go around. I sure to take more advantage of it, but I used to go around. But we did a lot of partying. It was just full of Marines and sailors and soldiers, and we just went around, and I went around to the different monuments and that. But I should have done more of it.
Well, mostly you went there because it was a big city with something to do.
But that's the biggest place around, yeah. There was some little town down there we used to go to too, but I forget what the name of it was.
All right. So now you get accepted into the paratroop program. Then what do you do by way of training for that?
Well, they sent me down to North Carolina then to train for the paratroopers. And there was about, I'd say 40 or 50 in the class. But time we graduated, there was only 22 of us, I think it was, left. Because in the paratroopers, you had to pass a real test, and then it was all volunteer, the paratroopers, and you could quit anytime you wanted till you got your wings. But once you got your wings, you were court-martialed if you didn't bail out. So we ran every place you went. We got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you would go exercise for an hour, then you would run, and in the afternoon you would run, and if anybody passed out, they just pulled them over into the ditch and left them there till they come to, and when they walked back to the camp, they kicked them out of the paratroopers and put them back in the Marines. And I'll never forget one time, you know, you do all that exercising and running. You was really hungry, and we was in the chow line, and we were hungry, and it makes me think of pictures I saw where these prisoners bang on the table, and we all started banging on the table wanting more money, or more money, excuse me, more food. And finally the captain come in, and he made them cook up some more food. So we made more food. So we had it was real rough. And then when we had to pack our own chutes until you got your wings. And the first time I jumped, the plane is a D4, and it used to come down and pick up a load, and they'd go up, and it was over an airfield, and they would jump out, and then they'd come down and get another load. Well, the load before I had to go up there, they bailed out, and this one guy bailed out, and his chute never opened. And he come straight down, and you could see it was just over the airport, and he bounced. I can still see him bouncing. And I was a sergeant at that time, and I had to be the first one to go out the door. And they brought that helmet in there, and the helmet was all crashed. And they said, "Now see if you didn't pack your chute right, what's going to happen to you?" Well, that didn't make it any easier.
Right.
And so when they got up there, and I was a sergeant at the time, so I had to go out first. And they used to say, "Hook on, stand by, go." And to this day, I don't remember them saying go, but I stood by the door looking down. The ground was going by me like that. I thought, I'll do this once, but that's the last time. And he said, go. And in the Marine Corps, we dove out. In the Army, they jumped out first. They jumped out, but we went out head first. Mm-hmm. And as I was coming, once it opened up, you'd say 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And then if it hadn't opened, you had this other chute on front of you, you'd open that. And I bailed out, and once it opened, geez, that was a lot of fun. You hit the ground, and you wanted to go right back up there. Mm-hmm. But that day, there was 4 of our guys run right by the door. They wouldn't bail out. And of course, when they landed, when we landed, they kicked these guys out and put them back in the regular Marine Corps, because they said, see what would happen if we were in combat and you froze in the door, you'd missed where you was landing. Mm-hmm. So they kicked them out. And then we had a lot of guys that, when we was running, if they got tired or something, or heat bothered them, they'd fall, they'd just pull them over into off the road and leave them lay there until they come to. And then when they come to, they'd walk back in, and then they'd kick them out of the paratroopers. But the paratroopers, you had to be, when you got done with that, you was in real good condition. Mm-hmm. So I think, like I said, we started out with about 40 or something. Only 22 of us graduated. But then after I graduated, they sent me to Camp Pendleton. We went to Camp Pendleton, and we lived up in the mountains in tents. And it was pretty rough up there, because you didn't have any floor. The only floor was in the head, which the Army calls it a latrine. Mm-hmm. And of course, that's the only floor there was. So in the Marine Corps, we got paid twice a week. So there we would do, and soon as we got paid, we was in we call it the head, shooting dice. While guys were sitting over here, we're shooting dice up there. So then we trained up there for I don't know how long. And then they disbanded the Marines, because I was told, I suppose it's right, they told that the islands were too small to jump on. Right. So they formed a 5th Marines, and the nucleus of the 5th Marines were the paratroopers and the raiders.
Right.
And then they had all rookies. So they trained us out there, and then we shipped to Hawaii, and we were on the big island on Hilo. And when we got off the ship, they put us on flat cars and took us way up by this volcano. And we trained up there. I forget how long we trained up there. But Hilo wasn't much of a town, so we didn't see much. But just before we shipped out, they took us over on Hawaii, on Honolulu, and we went on. And we thought that was really something.
Now, when they had you training on the Big Island, was that kind of jungle country that you were in?
No, it was volcano. There was a big volcano right up there.
So it was just
there
rock,
was just practically nothing
rock?
there. Yeah,
Okay.
there was practically nothing there at all.
Okay, well, I guess if they were planning on sending you to Iwo Jima, which was a little volcanic island, I guess that made some sense.
Yeah, that made so much sense. But I know at one time, like the kids like me tell this story, I was a sergeant there, and I was the guide, and this one sergeant we had, the head one, he was a staff sergeant. He fell us out. He had been training women Marines. He didn't know nothing about the Marine Corps, but he was a great one for inspection all the time. Mm-hmm. So he fell us out for inspection. I was the platoon sergeant guide, so I was standing by myself with the platoon there. But he handed me his rifle to hold while he inspected it. And I looked at it, and oh, was it dirty, holy smokes. Well, in the Marine Corps, that one thing, you took care of your rifle.
Right.
And I looked at that, and I thought, holy smokes. So I turned around, there was a corporal standing there. I said, here, take this rifle. And he said, no. I said, you heard what I said, take that rifle. So he took the sergeant's rifle and gave me his. And he come through inspecting the rifles, and he grabbed that rifle, and it was dirty. Oh, was it dirty. So he goes like that, and he rubs it on, and he was eating this corporal out. And finally the corporal said, well, Sergeant, it's not mine, that's your rifle. Sergeant Austin gave it to me. Mm-hmm. Oh, he closed ranks, and he called me into his tent, and he says, I got a good reason to run you up to the captain. And I said, why don't you do that? But be sure to take your rifle with you. Well, after that, we never got along too well together. I kind of put him on the spot, but it was just something I did, some funny things when I was in the Marine Corps.
Now, was he the company sergeant? I mean, was he a higher grade of sergeant than you were at that point?
We was in the 1st platoon, and he was you had a staff sergeant, and then you had a sergeant guide, which I was, and then you had your platoon. I forget how many was in the platoon. So that was an A company. I was in the A company. Mm-hmm. So we trained up there, and then they loaded us up, and they didn't tell us where we were going till we got out to sea, and they told us that we were going to go to Iwo Jima. Well, nobody knew what Iwo Jima was. We didn't know what the heck it was. And we got to Saipan, and we was on a troop ship there. And that's another funny thing about that troop ship. Oh, we got it was rough, gee. It was seasick and everything. And we was on there and thought, gee, when you went to Chow, you come up the gangplank up there, and you only let a couple guys out at a time, and you had to grab this railing and walk down along, then walk back down to where you ate. Well, at the end of there's long tables. At the end of the table, there was big 50-gallon buckets there, and there you would be eating, and other Marines would be there throwing up in this thing, because it was rough. I don't know how they stayed together. It just shook like that. Well, then when we was out there, that something went wrong with the sewerage system in there. So they didn't have toilets. All they had is troughs. You sat on a trough. And as a ship boat, they'd say, "Here it comes." You'd pick up your feet like that, and the stuff would go around, the waist would go by you. Here it's coming back. You pick up your feet again, and then there it went back. And that was quite a thing there, that troop ship, you know. On a troop ship, geez, you sleep about that much piece of time. And of course, you get all those guys in there, and at night, it was pretty smelly in there. And so we was on a troop ship. They took us to Saipan, and I don't remember how long we laid out there on the bay. But finally, we were going to Iwo, and I was in A company, but they assigned me to go in with the first wave, because I think it was B and C went in first. And I was supposed to go in with the first wave, then I was supposed to report back to the captain.
Okay.
And so...
Did you have a radio, or was there how would you communicate?
No, I had to come back and tell them, boys, so we got off the troop ship, and you had to be careful. You had to go down these, you saw them, the ropes where you went down. Well, if you didn't time it right, as the ship went up like this, the other one dropped. If you let go, you fell. Right. So you had to time it just right. So when you was coming down there, as the ship come up like here, you could just step off in it.
You were getting into landing craft?
We were getting into an LST,
yeah.
And we were getting into that. So there's some guys missed it and went in the water. Some guy went banging, but I was fortunate. I got on there. So we took off for Iwo Jima, and that night before we went to sleep there, geez, they fed us like kings. We'd never been fed so good before. We had hamburgers and everything. We thought, boy, this is a good deal. Of course, it's the first time I'd been in combat, and I was looking forward to it, and which wasn't too smart. And so we took off, and that night when we went to bed, there was about 6 or 8 maybe of these small LSTs, and they in the bottom is where these half tracks were, where you loaded in it, and you're supposed to take you up right on the island, and they were just small. Well, I showed you the picture of me on it in that book there.
Okay. Now the LSTs were the ships that had the doors that opened sideways out of the front.
They would open
below
up
the deck,
and when we did it, we went down. But the night before, there's only about 6 or 8 of us. And then when we got to Iwo, and I don't remember how many miles it was, 800-900 miles or something. But holy, when the sun come up, you couldn't believe the amount of ships were there. My God, there were ships, there was cruisers, and there was destroyers, there was aircraft carriers, and the Missouri was a battleship. And when we had to load, we went down below to get in these half tracks, and we had to come up to the Missouri, then we had to go around it and go around in front of it, and they were shooting out there, and I never saw flames off those great big guns here, though. Gee, the flames would go for, geez, I don't know how long, right over the top of us. And we started in to land, and I still forget, I should have put the gun to his head. This sailor got us in about 50 yards or 100, I don't know. He said he couldn't go any further and told us to bail out. Well, I think he was nothing but yellow, and we jumped out, and when you jumped, we was up in the water up to our necks. Right. So we had to get along, go ashore, and we went ashore, and when the first wave, well, before that, they saw along the edge there was all a bunch of big tanks there, and they looked like 50-gallon drums, and the Marines, they thought they were going to be fire. Right. So the first wave, we had to put all this white stuff on our face. We rubbed it all over our face and our hands and everything. Anything that exposed, you put that stuff on, and it was just white. And there we started into land, and I'll never forget this one sergeant. he had been on Guadalcanal, and there he was in the corner crying, and he wouldn't even move, for he knew what we was going to.
Right.
And at that time, we thought that was kind of odd, you know.
Now, when you had been trained, whether in Hawaii or before that, were you trained by people who had combat experience?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
But they weren't telling you much about what it was like?
No, they didn't tell you much about it. Two of my best friends, they were both Indians. One was from a New York reservation, one was from out west someplace. And I never saw them again. I was told they both lost their life on Iwo Jima, but they were paratroopers. One was a raider, one was a paratrooper. They had both been on Guadalcanal, but they never told us much about it. So here I'm a young kid, then I was about 22, and I was all eager beaver. And I found out that test. But then we got out about 50 yards from the thing. He told us to bail out. So we did jump out, and we landed on the island, and nothing happened. It was just like...
Now, were you driving the half-tracks out, or did they stay on the boat?
No, he turned around and took back. He went back.
Oh.
And I'll never forget that. And of course, he had to go back and get some more to come in. So that first wave, we landed on the island, and there was just like going on down to Holland. Nobody was there. Of course, you couldn't see nothing because they were all underground.
Right.
And we landed, and what the heck you going to do? Well, they let 3 waves get in. And three waves get in, and then they opened up on us, and Mount Botsi was on the left, and we were supposed to go up straight to capture this airfield and turn right. Well, they shot these mortars from Mount Surabaya, and they'd shoot them down that, and you could hear them coming, and they'd just coming right down there, and you could hear them coming. You just laid there, kind of praying, and they'd lift you right off the ground. Well, you couldn't dig a hole because it was lava, and it was hot. You didn't go down that far, and it was hot. And so you'd hear them coming. You just lay there like that, and there was a kid laying in this hole, which I suppose was done by our big guns. Right. And we were laying there and with our hands overhead like that. He was behind me there, and it lifted you right off the ground. And after it went by me, I turned him, and his head was off. And when I raised up like that, I can still see it after 60 years, there was either the brains or the guts or something. And there it laid right next to my head. And I looked at it, and of course, it was quite an experience, but there he laid without any head. And then I got up and I run ahead, and we used to see these cowboys shows where somebody got shot and they went like this. Well, that's exactly the way that happened. We run ahead, and this guy up ahead of me, all of a sudden he went down, and there was a pillbox up ahead of me, and I thought it was knocked out, because they'd been shooting off for weeks before, I guess, but they never did. It never did any good because it was all underground. But I thought it was out, and I dove into a kind of a hole next to that pillbox, and I laid there, and I was going to get up to move, and I heard a pop, and I turned around, and there was a hand grenade, a Jap hand grenade. Well, our hand grenades would bust up in big pieces, but theirs were smooth, and it just got in slivers. And I was told later whether it's true or not. They said that the reason theirs was that way, they figured that they would wound a soldier, and then it'd take another one to take care of him. So when I looked at it, I heard that pop, and I looked at it, and it went off. And of course I had all this white stuff on my face and everything, and I got shrapnel in my face, and then I got up and moved out, and this guy grabbed me. He thought I'd lost my buttons, because I must have looked pretty bad with that white stuff on my face and blood all over. And he threw me down and told me, I forget what he was trying to help me or something, but I kept saying, no, I got to get back and tell the captain. And so there I laid, and well, I was pretty dazed, I guess, because I forget a lot of it. But I know that when they took me back to go on to a hospital ship, when they took me down where we landed, there were dead Marines all over. Jesus, they were piled. You had to step over them, and you heard crying, and you heard yelling, Corman, and guys screaming, and these kids crying. And of course, Marines do cry, but you'd cry too if you lost your leg or your buddy died in your arms.
Right.
So it was, you had to step over all these dead Marines, and they were just piled one on top of the other. And the Japs really knew they could have, that night they could have attacked us and pushed us right back. It was complete chaos. Nobody knew what they were doing. And then when the tanks come in, they couldn't go because of the lava rock. And they took me out on the hospital ship, but like I told my son, I can't remember anything about the hospital ship. But he said that they probably had me doped up, or maybe they did, but I just can't remember. The only thing I remember is when the flag went up on Iwo Jima, all the ships blew their horns, and they were really blowing all their horns and that. So they put me on this hospital ship, but I can't remember nothing about it. And they took me back to Saipan. And am I going on too much?
You're doing fine.
Oh, well, they took me back to Saipan, and they put me in a hut, a field hospital. And I don't know how long I was there, but then they took me to Hawaii, to the hospital in Hawaii. Well, I had all this metal in my face, and I had some in my eye. So the doctor said he had to operate on my eye. And I can still see it today. They deadened it, of course, but I was
conscious
at it. And I can still see that knife. It was bent like that. And I can still see it. Well, he had to go in, and they explained to me what they was going to do. They had to cut my eye, and then they had to make a hole so they could use a magnet to pull the metal out of my eye. And geez, it felt like they pulled my whole dang eye out. So then they had to pull the skin down over that hole, and he put 2 stitches in each side so it would grow over. Well, they put me in the ward, and I was laid flat on my back there for 30-some days. They had sandbags on both sides of my head, and I never got so sick of Hawaiian music in all my life, because they put those, of course, they was trying to build up your morale and everything. And they put those earphones on and played that Hawaiian music. I thought, oh, geez. Well, then these Red Cross workers, or these women, they'd have to feed me, because I laid there with sandbags on my head. And they'd come there, and then they'd tell me what they had for dinner that day, or supper, or what it was. And this one day, this woman said that she was telling me, she said they got spinach. And I said, oh, don't give me any spinach, holy smokes. And I'll never forget the poor woman. Here she's trying to build up my morale and asked me about what I did and all my girlfriend and all this. And she gave me a mouthful of spinach. And I went, ugh! And I threw that out. And that poor woman, you should see her. Oh, she was so sorry. She was begging me to forgive her. But that was kind of funny. But I laid there. I was there over 30 days. Well, they'd give me a shot. I don't know how many days. At first, they'd give me a shot. I guess it was penicillin. They'd get it in this shoulder. Then they'd do it in this shoulder. Well, then it got so hard, they started doing it in my butt. And after that, after I laid there for, I think, 31 days or something, they took me in. They had to take these stitches out. So the doctor had to take the stitches. At that time, the doctor said, when you get older, you're going to lose your control of your eye. It's going to just roll around. But thank God that never happened. But then they took those stitches out, and I was there for quite a while. I was in the hospital, I guess, over 9 months.
Wow.
So then they took me back to the Farragut, Idaho, to the hospital in Farragut, Idaho, and I was up there in the hospital in Farragut, Idaho. That's when the war was over. Well, all these guys were celebrating, but we just had a little old town. Probably wasn't as big as Wyoming. So we went ashore. We went to town, but I guess there's only 1 or 2 bars in it, and a few grocery stores and a gas station or something.
Now, after those first 30 days, those first 30 days when you were in the hospital there, were your arms and legs restrained too? You said your head was between sandbags.
No.
So you couldn't move your hands and things
I
at
could
least?
move my hands in that.
All right.
But later in life, I had something wrong with my knee, and this doctor x-rayed my side here. And he said to me, boy, he said, when you got shot by that shotgun, that sure left a lot of pellets in your leg. And I said, well, I never got shot by a shotgun. I said, that's a metal from a grenade. So I still got it in my leg,
Wow.
but it never did bother me. Because those slivers, they took it out of my face. They just pick it out, and they were just small slivers. And the same one that was in my eye, but I lost the fluid behind my eyes, so that's why I got bad eyesight here. So they shipped me up to that hospital, and I was there, I don't know how long. I was there too long anyway. But then after that, they shipped, I still had time to do because I had signed over. The war was over.
Now, when did you sort of re-enlist? Was it before you went to Iwo Jima?
Well, before, when we were in Saipan, they come and said anybody that had their time was up within 6 months, you could re-enlist, and you could get that. I think it was $400, or did I tell you that already?
Not on camera,
No.
you didn't.
Well, they said that you could re-enlist, and you could get $400, I think it was. So I thought, well, if I'm going to get killed, my folks might as well have that. So I re-enlisted, and of course, in that 6 months after the war was over, I still had 18 months to do, which I wasn't really sorry. But then they took me back to San Diego, and then they needed guards down in Norfolk, Virginia. So they sent me down to Norfolk, and I was a guard there on a naval base.
Right.
And I was down there until my time was up, and then they sent me to Chicago, and I was discharged from Chicago.
Well, what was the experience like in Norfolk? Was that a good base to be working
Oh,
at?
yeah. Well, it's a kind. I thought I had a good job. First I was a guard there, and then they made me the colonel's driver. Well, you had to keep that car all polished and everything like that. You had to be dressed up all the time. But I'd pick him up at 8 o'clock in the morning and take him back at 5 o'clock at night. And geez, day after day, and I had to be always dressed,
Right.
and always be sharp and polished and everything. And then I'd sit there in the barracks waiting for him if he called me. And that's when I would go down to the mess hall, and the mess sergeant and I would play cribbage, and you can't imagine how many times we played cribbage. How many, oh my gosh, all day long, and here I'd wait for him. I'd pick him up at 5 and take him home. Well, he had a back trouble, and I'd have to take him to the hospital. Well, one time I took him to the hospital, and when he was in the hospital, I fell asleep in the car. Well, when he come out, he went and shook me and woke me up. Well, you're supposed to be, of course, be there and open up the door for him and close him, and I got all excited, and I started up and I jammed it in reverse and backed right into a telephone pole, and he just got done in there. I worked on his back, and I can still hear him. He went, oh! And I was just shaking, and I thought, oh. But he didn't say nothing till the next morning when I picked him up. He said, did you damage his car yesterday? And I said, no. He was a real good guy. And I said, no. And so I'd pick him up there, and then I played baseball for the Marines there. And we played the City League. Well, the City League asked me to play with them. And I don't want to brag, but I was a pretty good ball player. And the sports writer for the paper called up the colonel and asked him. They had a tryout. The Yankees had a minor league club there, and this sports guy called up and asked if I could come down there and another guy, a pitcher. So the colonel told me, I'm not a Yankee fan, but you get a Jeep, and you can take the Jeep. So he let me drive a Jeep down there. Of course, I wasn't the caliber of any of that. It didn't work out, but I wasn't that good, but that guy thought I was. But then I did my time. When my time was up, I went to Chicago, and I got separated, and it was over with. So.
Right. Did the Marines make any effort to encourage you to stay in and become a lifer, or did they figure you just
No,
leave?
not then. They most of the guys wanted out, and when your time come, they just come and said, Austin, you're getting packed up. You got to go to get separated. So I did, but I had another guy, and I did offer. We asked him if they had need any Marines, because he was an old timer. He was telling how great China was.
Right.
So we went up and asked them if they needed anybody in China, and they said no. And that's the only, I would have re-enlisted then, but then when he said that, I didn't. So I got separated, and since then I've been real fortunate. I got 11 grandchildren, and so I've been.
Now, did you come back home then once that you were discharged?
I come back home, and yeah.
And then what kind of work did you go into then?
And then when I got home, my brother and I went in the trucking business, and we delivered refrigerators and stove. Well, we got caught going to Muskegon without a license. You only could go 6 miles from your office, which was our house, without an MASC license. And that we got caught for going to Muskegon. So I said to my brother, well, this is it. We got to go get a license. So we went down to Lansing to get a license. And they had a bunch of lawyers from these big companies. And they said they didn't need another MASC license in Grand Rapids. So here was 2 little old guys wanting a license.
Right.
So I said to my brother, I said, I'm not going to do that the rest of my life. So we gave it up, and I went to Steelcase, and I started out in the factory, and then I was promoted to the office, to the PIC, and then they promoted me out to shipping. I was a supervisor in shipping, and I shipped out to all of our foreign, to Japan and to North Carolina, to Canada, that, and I did that until I had 30, how many years was I there? Yeah, I was there 32 years at Steelcase. Then I retired when I was 59 years old, and I've been real fortunate since then to have such many nice grandchildren and everything, and they look after me pretty good, so I have no complaints. But like I say, I'm no hero. The heroes are the dead ones. So that's my life.
All right. Now, how do you think that whole experience in the Marine Corps wound up affecting you? I mean, aside from just the physical injury, but in terms of the rest of that experience there, was it a good one for you, or what did you gain from it?
Well, I've had, at first when I got out, I had trouble. I would see that guy in the hole with me. Mm-hmm. I can still see that guts. What, after 60-some years, I can still see that. But I was fortunate that I was strong enough. Mm-hmm. We got a lot of these kids coming back from Iraq now are committing suicide, and people, a lot of people kind of look down on them and that. But until you've been in a war and heard the screaming and the hollering and the blood, nobody can believe what these kids in Iraq are going over. Mm-hmm. Over there, you know, they don't know who the enemy was.
Right.
We knew out in front of us. They were out in front. Over there, I could be talking to you, and you go outside and you shoot me.
Right.
And they're going through things that the average people has no idea. And that's why I play poker twice a week, and I'm not a favorite of Bush. Mm-hmm. And I said some things about him. This one guy said one day, he said to me, he said, you know, you're talking about the president? And I said, well, isn't this a great country that I can stand here and call him names and not afraid that you're going to go tell somebody, like in these other countries, go tell them what I said about the leader. They come and throw me in jail. And I said, you know, that's what I fought for, freedom of speech.
Right.
And that's why I'm calling them the names. And over in Iraq, I just can't believe what these kids are going through. And the average person has no idea.
We don't.
No,
and there's no draft either. I mean, in Vietnam, they had some of those same problems, but a lot of the guys went there, they were draftees, and you had the public outcry eventually because of a lot of that. But all of this stuff is why it's important that you're able to come in here and tell us what you saw, because it's a reminder that war is not just a chess game or a football game or something like that. It's a really, really nasty business, and people have to go through really terrible things.
But the people just don't realize it. And when you hear the screaming and yelling, Corman, Corman, and seeing these people, I'll never forget this one sergeant. He went running there, and his legs were blown off, and he was running on just stumps. And he was a screaming. I can still see him running. Of course, he dropped dead. But people just have no idea what these soldiers are going through today. And right now, red, white, and blue runs through my veins. But I'm still bitter about him being in Iraq, that these guys, what they are going through. And you can't explain it, and nobody can really understand what those kids are going through. And those kids are coming back, committing suicide from the things they saw and done. And the average person, just like now, who gives a heck what I think? I mean, I serve my country, and so what?
Well, more people care than you might think.
Well,
And just by having you tell your story and encouraging people to do that, it does get their attention. And actually, part of this project includes talking to people who come back from Iraq and Afghanistan and recording their stories too, so we don't forget. All of this, though, I mean, it's important for a lot of the reasons that you've just said. So I just want to thank you for coming in here and talking to me today.
Well, you know what I think they should do? I think that in school they should start out every morning, they should say the Pledge of Allegiance. Every morning they should sing the national anthem. How many people really know the national anthem? But we got away from that. And I don't think that today that they really give a hoot about me or what I went through. But I'm sure, like a guy said to me the other day, he said, you know, what do you, and he was an old timer. He said, what do you think the youth would do today if we would attack? I don't think they would go, well, I don't believe that at all. I think if we was attacked, our youth would join in just like that. Because World War II, as soon as we were attacked, they lined up to get in there. And I'm got enough faith in my youth that they do the same thing. But to go over and to fight a war like in Iraq, which I don't know what we're fighting for. And I can see why the youth of our today says to heck with it. But if anybody attacked us, I think they would be there. I think they'd be there.
I work with people that age all the time, and I expect that they would.
And I'm sure I have faith in the youth, because you know the majority of our youth are good people, but they have so many things that they can get in trouble in today,
Right.
And the percentage is actually small, but the papers are full of it. But I'm thoroughly convinced that they would defend our country. And we did it for the right to call our leaders any names we wanna. We got a bunch of squirrels in Washington, D.C. that are, well, I won't go into that, but I'm just a little bitter about
But sometimes we can vote them out of office too.
Well, that's what we should do. That's what we should do. And I'm an independent myself, but that's the sad part of it. But a lot of people, Democrats and Republicans, if they put up a jackass, they'd vote for him. They don't look at, you know, you can't agree with everybody. And even though I think, and I'm an independent, and I voted Republican, and I voted Democrat, and I think that you should listen to them. You can't agree with everything, but you should balance it out and see which is the closest. I don't think we should have two parties myself, but this is why it's a free country.
Right.
I mean, like in Ottawa County, well, if you're a Democrat, you better not run,
Right?
Because you're going to get you get voted down. But that's why we fought for the freedom
That's
of
right.
speech, the freedom to vote the way you want, the freedom to call your commander, your president, so and so, and not be afraid of somebody coming over the next day and locking you up for calling him us this and that. So we got a great country. We got a great country, and I hope that the youth of our today are really realizing how lucky they are that we got, like out at your Grand Valley, you got students out there that can become doctors, lawyers, school teachers, businessmen. They got that freedom, and they got it because of these kids over there.
Right.
The World War I, World War II, they fought and they died for the privilege of you being able to grow up to be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, or something. And I think a lot of them don't realize, like on Leno the other day, he has a program on there where they interview people on the street, and they asked this one guy, he said, who did we fight in World War II? And here he was a college student. He said, the French. And I thought, holy smokes, here's the French. Then they said, well, who was president in World War II? I don't know. Well, one was World War II, and this one girl says, 1952? So I think more of that should be taught in our schools. Like I say, sing the anthem, because I'm a thoroughbred American. I love my country, but I think there's a lot of things that we have, a lot of things we can improve on.
Well, that's often going to be the case.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it makes for a good story, so thank you for coming in.
Well.
And that will probably do it here for us. So
All right.
now,
Thank you.
turn our microphones off here. Okay. Well, you did really well with that, including with the stuff that had to be really hard to talk about. And it is material that I expect I'll wind up using in my own classes.
I wouldn't have done it if it wasn't for those. They encouraged me to do it, and their teacher wanted me to do it. And she saw me that one time. She says, "You're my hero," and I'm no hero. But she wanted me to do it. And then Thanksgiving, they taught me into it, so I wasn't much in favor. I didn't think anybody give a hoot what this old goat thought.
Well, I think you're outvoted.
As the case in many situations.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, they'll just gang up on you.